In ancient Greece, a woman inhaled the breath of the earth and became a voice of the gods. In 1692 Massachusetts, girls claimed visions sent by the devil and unleashed chaos. What if both were tapping into the same unknown? Two different worlds, one terrifying truth. Salem and Delphi may be thousands of years apart, but their whispers come from the same fear.
In ancient Greece, a woman knelt inside a sacred temple. Beneath her feet, the earth breathed, releasing invisible vapors from a chasm in the stone. She inhaled them and trembled. Her eyes rolled back, her voice changed. And what she spoke next would determine the fate of kings, nations, and the course of war. They called her the Pythia, the Oracle of Delphi, the mouthpiece of Apollo himself. Thousands of years later, in a cold Puritan village in New England, a group of young girls gathered in secret. They whispered to one another of shadows, of things they'd seen in the woods, things they couldn't explain. Soon, they too trembled. They screamed, they pointed, and within months, they had turned a quiet community into a crucible of fire and fear. Two women, two eras, two voices rising out of silence. One was worshipped. The other was hunted. But what if they were speaking the same language? What if Salem and Delphi are echoes of the same ancient terror? In this episode of Ghosts of the Mind, we're pulling back the veil between two of the most haunting events in human history. We're going to examine the terrifying symmetry between the Oracle of Delphi, the revered mouthpiece of prophecy in ancient Greece, and the Salem witch trials, one of the darkest, most shameful chapters in America's early history. At first glance, they seem worlds apart. One belongs to the age of temples and laurel wreaths, the other to the stern black hats and gallows of Puritan America. But beneath the surface, both were driven by the same forces: fear, power, control, and most of all, a society's fragile relationship with the voices of women. Let's begin in Delphi, around the 6th century BCE. It was believed to be the center of the world. The omphalos, the navel stone, marked the sacred heart of civilization, and at its core was a woman, the Pythia. She would sit upon a golden tripod, hovering above a mysterious chasm. Beneath her flowed gases, later believed to be ethylene. The fumes would intoxicate her, sending her into a frenzied trance. Her body would shake, her speech would become erratic, poetic, sometimes unintelligible. But the priests listened carefully, because in her madness was the voice of Apollo. Kings, generals, merchants, they all came to Delphi, desperate to hear her words.
They paid in gold, silver, and sacrifice.
They believed she could see beyond time, and sometimes she could. The oracle predicted the fall of empires, the rise of tyrants, even her cryptic warning to Croesus: "If you go to war, a great empire will fall," proved to be tragically accurate, just not the empire he expected. In Delphi, the voice of a woman was holy, feared, yes, but respected. Controlled through ritual, yes, but allowed to speak. Now, Let's move forward 2,000 years to the bitter winter of 1692, Salem Village, Massachusetts Bay Colony.
Salem was gripped by tension, hardship. A long, bitter war with indigenous tribes raged to the north. Famine stalked the fields. Disease, loss, cold, and suspicion filled the air. And then, the girls began to convulse. It started small. Abigail Williams and Betty Paris, ages 11 and 9. They screamed, they thrashed, they barked like dogs. They said they were being attacked by witches. It was strange, disturbing, but more strange was the fact that the adults believed them. The girls began naming names. Tituba, the enslaved woman from Barbados, was first. Then others followed. Neighbors, friends, elders, entire families were pulled into a vortex of paranoia and rage. Salem erupted. Within weeks, dozens were imprisoned. Courts were formed, trials began, and the hangings started. 19 people were executed. One man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death with stones, crushed slowly as he refused to enter a plea. His last words were, "More weight." The youngest accused? 4-year-old Dorothy Good. The cause of it all? A handful of trembling girls and a frightened, superstitious town that saw prophecy as poison. Let's pause. In Delphi, a woman screamed and shook and was exalted. In Salem, a girl screamed and shook and sparked a purge. Why? Why were both believed? Why did both change the course of their nations? And why did only one survive to tell the tale? The answer lies in the way societies framed female power. In ancient Greece, prophecy was sacred but feared. To contain it, the Greeks built a system, a temple, a priesthood, layers of ceremony and sacrifice. The oracle was dangerous but manageable, so long as she was housed within ritual. She spoke, but only within the boundaries set for her. In Salem, there was no ritual, no priesthood to translate, no temple to contain. There was only chaos. And when female voices rose, uncontrolled, mysterious, terrifying, they were treated as threats, not vessels. Witch, not prophet. Devil, not God. Both societies feared what they couldn't control. The ancient Greeks used myth to tame mystery. The Puritans used law to destroy it. In Delphi, the oracle gave counsel to kings. In Salem, the girls were believed, then discarded. Once they had served their purpose, the trials stopped. The accusations dried up. The hysteria was buried, but not forgotten. And here's the deepest cut of all. Both Salem and Delphi ended in silence. Delphi's fall didn't come with fire or conquest, it came with reason. When the Romans spread their empire and Christianity took hold, the oracle's voice was declared heresy. She was replaced by priests, by scripture, by a new form of power. And Salem? Salem collapsed under the weight of its own guilt. Within a year, the courts admitted error, the trial stopped, the governor pardoned the prisoners, and history began erasing what it couldn't explain. But the damage was done. Both sides were silenced, not because the voices were false, but because they were too powerful. So what do we learn when we look at these two broken mirrors? Delphi, the womb of prophecy; Salem, the crucible of hysteria. Both revolved around young women, both gave voice to visions, and both triggered responses from society that still echo today. The question isn't whether the oracle was real, or whether the Salem girls were lying. The question is, what do we do when truth comes from the lips of the powerless? Do we listen? Do we fear? Or do we burn? Today,
We still don't understand trance. We don't understand where visions come from or why some people seem able to see things others cannot. We call them mentally ill or clairvoyant or possessed. We still argue over which voices deserve platforms and which deserve cages. The oracle is silent. The girls are gone. But their echoes remain in the ground, in the air, in the way we treat those who speak differently, see differently, feel differently. History doesn't repeat, but it does whisper. And if you listen carefully, you can still hear them. In the ruins of Delphi, in the frost of New England, in every woman who ever dared to speak what others feared to hear. Subscribe to Ghosts of the Mind for more stories they tried to bury. Because the past isn't dead, it's just silent, waiting to be heard.